Hello, welcome to week 11. This week we will continue working on Java methods. We have a few more objectives this week. We will learn how to pass arguments by value. We will develop reusable code. One of the important properties of methods is that it provides you to create modular, easy to read, easy to debug, and easy to maintain code. We will see how to use method overloading, which is an object-oriented property of the language. And we will also talk about the scope of variables. Sometimes methods will not return a value. Not all Java methods are required to return a value. And when a method doesn't have anything to return, we will define the return value as void. Those are sometimes called void methods. These methods perform some actions that does not need to return a value to the caller. A void method don't need to have a return statement in its body. This is one of the basic differences. When a function needs to return something, you have to use that return keyword to make sure that the function will return some kind of variable, some kind of value to the calling program. For void methods, you don't need to do that. And here's an example. You can type this program in IntelliJava. At this point, actually, you can just stop the slides and stop this video and type this and see the results. But basically, this is a very simple example where we see a main function. It prints something on the screen and it calls this function here, print grade function, which is a void function, twice. On both occasions, the call sends the function a double value. In the first case, this value is 78.5. And this number will be received by the score variable inside the print grade function. And this function will do something based on this value. It will compare the incoming score with some constant values and then print out some letter grade. So this is a very simple function that only prints something on the screen, but nothing is expected back from this method in the main program. So that's why this function is defined as void. It does not need to return any value. And void basically means nothing. Here's an example function. It's called nprintln that takes two arguments. The first one is a string. Here, the parameter name is message. And the second parameter of the method is an integer value. And you can see what this function is doing. It's a for loop that that uses I as a counter, starts from 0, it counts up to n, and it prints out the message, whatever message is sent to the function. Again, this is an example of a void function, which means it doesn't return anything. And if you examine the program, these 4 lines, you can see that there is no return keyword anywhere, because void functions don't need to return anything. Now, how do we pass arguments by value in Java? Basically, as a general rule, in Java, all arguments are passed by value. This means the programs, when they call a method, they will pass these values inside this pair of parentheses to the function. But this is only one way argument passing. Anything that happens in the function will not affect the values of these parameters back in the original program. Again, at this point you can pause the video and type this function in an example program and try to call this function by, for example, using this example line. Welcome to Java, and the second parameter is 5. So what do you expect the output to be? Here's another example. And you can try other messages and other numbers. So far, in several examples we have seen, we have some parameters besides the function name. You can have 1, 2, or more parameters, and the order of these parameters matter. When you're calling a method, you need to provide arguments which must be given in the same order as their respective parameters in the method's signature. This is known as parameter order association. The arguments must match the parameters in order, number, and type. So you have to know the method's signature to be able to properly call a method. Whenever you invoke a method with an argument, the value of the argument is passed to the parameter, and that's why we call it pass by value. If the argument is a variable rather than a literal value, that is a constant number, some kind of letter, or a message kind of a string, the value of the variable is passed to the parameter. So the parameter inside the function will receive that value, and that parameter can be used inside the body of the function however you want. The variable inside the function will change value, but back on the original calling program, for example, the main function, the variable that you pass as an argument to the function will not be affected. So whatever changes are made inside the function will not change the value back in the main program. Here's an example. This is a very short program where we have a main function and an increment function. Inside the main function, we define an integer and initialize it with a value of 1. Now we print the value of x, and after that we call a function called increment. We pass the value of x as an argument. After the call, we will print x again. Let's examine the function itself. The increment function takes one integer value. In this case, the integer variable inside the function is called n. And the value of n will be increased by 1. So for example, if n is 5 at this point, after the increase, n will be equal to 6. Then inside the function, this message will be printed on screen with the new value of n. So n inside the method is, say, 6. Now, what happens with this main method calling increment by the value of x? X is equal to 1, and we call increment x. So the value of 1 will be passed to the function. And now at this point, when the function starts running, the value of x will be passed to the parameter n. Now n is equal to 1 because we sent 1 to the function. N will be increased, and at this point, at the end of this line, n will be equal to 2. Then this line will print 2 on screen, and then the method ends. At this point, when the method ends, the value of n will be lost because n is a variable inside this function, and n is not recognized inside the main function. Main function only knows x. And when we come back from the increment function, whatever is printed on screen will be the value of x, not the value of n, which means still on this line the output will be 1, not 2. As another example, I give you another piece of code, test pass by value. Please try that code in your IDE. This program creates a method for swapping two variables. However, the values of the arguments are not changed after the method is invoked. Try to understand why.